The Sirah biography of Muhammad describes the conversion of the Negus to Islam, but many other biographies disagree. Haykal and Lings, for instance. The divergence of opinion on the matter of conversion is significant. In most of the Quranic encounters with believers, those who hear the testimony of Islam either convert or resist in hostile ways and thus are condemned. The Negus account falls into a different category. What does this suggest about a Christian reading of the Quran, or rather what the Quran expects of a Christian reading of the Quran? The Quran expects that Christians already have enough learning and already have enough belief to recognize the truth that is in the Quran. The Quran expects that the reading of the Quran will be profoundly moving, even unto tears. A Christian reader of the Quran, one who seeks to understand the Quran as Muslims understand it, to comprehend with reverence that Muslims have for the Quran, must be one capable and willing to be moved to tears. A word that requires particular attention here is reverence. Paul Woodruff, a scholar of the Greek classics, describes the virtue of reverence as a virtue that encompasses, orders, and modulates feelings of awe, shame, and respect. He writes, "Reverence begins in a deep understanding of human limitations. From this grows the capacity to be in awe of whatever we believe lies outside our control: God, truth, justice, nature, even death. The capacity for awe, as it grows, brings with it the capacity for respecting fellow human beings, flaws and all. This in turn fosters the ability to be ashamed when we show moral flaws exceeding the normal human allotment." The nature of reverence not only explains reasons why we might be moved to tears through a reverent reading of the Quran, that it awes and then humbles us. It also helps us understand the relationship between reverential reading of a text from different religious traditions and faithfulness to our own distinctive belief system. As Frank Clooney, again, explains, when pluralism is more than a muted version of a Christian universalism or of a post-religious rationalism, it may be taken as a narrative strategy that speaks powerfully beyond what religious traditions have always said about themselves, in order to describe how the world coheres and has meaning when many religious traditions are noticed together within a new world narrative, and where all extant stories are subsumed into one greater story. But this option is more costly than it might seem at first, given the deep commitments of religious communities to their own narratives. A pluralist narrative can well be taken as an aggressive act which religious communities are quite likely to resist. A reverent reading of the Quran does not deny that there are significant differences between our religions. We do not ignore these dissents, but they do not inhibit a reverent reading. But what if we believe that the tradition in which we read, what if we believe that it is untrue? This still does not prohibit reverential reading, since essential to the nature of reverence is humility. The essence of reverence is the knowledge that we are not gods or God, hence our apprehension of truth, though not the existence of truth, is always hindered. We read reverently because we wish to understand this other tradition. Judgment on that other tradition if one would wish to exercise such judgment, is a separate operation. The work of comparative theology to which Frank Clooney has introduced us has great potentials not only for Christian or any other understanding of Islam, but also for Christian understanding of Christianity, and I dare say for Muslim understanding of Islam. Fethullah Gulen, in his introductory comments on Unal's translation, emphasizes the importance of learning and knowledge of Arabic grammar, hadith, tafsir, and other sciences for those who wish to interpret the Quran. This raises obvious issues for us. Nevertheless, he also says that anybody is encouraged to interpret the Quran, and therefore I venture my own interpretation of Sibha Allah, the color of God. I hold that, while the interpretations of scholars hold the deepest respect, I can put forth my own interpretation. And any interpretation, of course, is subject to the critique of the community of the reverent at large, and so must mine. God is pure light, which both has no color and contains all color. As Unal translates it with great subtlety, this is the color that God has put on the universe. But that color is refracted in the universe, so we see reds and blues and yellows, and colors beyond the visible range. We see the colors of God, but never the color of God. But there are no colors at all without the pure light from which colors are emitted. This is not, however, a lesson in physics, but rather a lesson in humility, an essential component of reverence. Prior to this verse, the Quran speaks of the Millah of Abraham, the creed of Abraham, which supersedes the various subsequent texts. We here today are all reflections of that original Millah, colors emitted from a purer light that represents the standard by which our various Islams, our diverse ways of submission to God, may be judged. These verses are also a lesson in shame, for they mention the tendency of various sects to claim too much for themselves, and exclusivity and superiority that accrues to themselves the right to judge, a right that belongs only to God. Verse 136 lists the prophets of God and ends with the assertion, we do not differentiate in faith between any of them. Thus we are Muslims, those who submit to God. But the third component of reverence is awe, for as the text says, God is all-hearing and all-knowing. We know in part, but God knows completely. When we read the Quran as Muslims, people who submit to God, we read reverently and thus are humbled, shamed, and awed. Perhaps we are moved to tears, but truly we are brought to God. Teshuvah.